All right, so get ready because today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty unique.
Yeah.
It's a partnership between Bhutan
Okay.
and this initiative called TATANKA. And you've got all those articles, project descriptions in front of you.
Right.
And they're all about how this partnership is trying to make a global impact. And they're doing that by blending ancient traditions with cutting-edge technology, which is, I think we often think about that as like preserving cultures, but this is more about empowering those cultures to really thrive.
To thrive in a world that's rapidly changing.
In a rapidly changing world, exactly.
And I think what's so fascinating here is just how deeply they're going with this.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Bhutan,
Yeah.
which is, famous for this whole gross national happiness philosophy.
Yeah, right.
And they're joining forces with this group, TATANKA, that uses things like art, education, and AI to support indigenous communities worldwide.
Okay, so I know Bhutan gets a lot of attention for this whole happiness thing, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Right.
It can't just be, everybody smiling all the time, right?
No, it's way more nuanced than that.
Okay.
So Bhutan actually measures its success based on 4 pillars.
All right.
Good governance, sustainable socioeconomic development,
Okay.
cultural preservation, and environmental conservation.
Got it.
And they even have this thing called the GNH Index. It's like an index that actually tracks things like psychological well-being,
Wow.
health, education, ecological diversity.
So they're not just talking about happiness, they're actually measuring it.
Yeah, they're measuring it in a really holistic way.
In a really holistic way that's impressive.
It is.
But I guess where does TATANKA fit into all of this?
So TATANKA's goals actually line up really well with Bhutan's focus on well-being and cultural preservation. For example, take their Orchestra Americana project. It brings together musicians from all these different indigenous cultures all over the world and blends their instruments and musical styles to make something totally new while still honoring that heritage.
So it's not just preserving the music in a museum.
Right.
It's creating this living, evolving expression of these cultures.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell me more about some of the other projects.
Well, they've got isc.org and sdg4.ai.
Okay.
And these are all about using the power of AI to try to make education more accessible and more effective, especially for people in remote or underserved communities.
Got it.
You can think about personalized learning tailored to different needs and cultural contexts.
Okay, that's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Because Bhutan is embracing technology.
Yeah.
So it's the perfect place to test out this kind of innovation.
Yeah, sure.
But using AI in education also raises a lot of questions, right? How do we make sure it's being used responsibly and ethically?
Yeah, and that's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
TATANKA is definitely aware of those concerns.
Okay.
And they're working to develop AI systems that are, transparent and unbiased.
Right.
And they really prioritize human oversight.
So it's not about replacing teachers with robots.
Exactly.
It's about
empowering educators.
It's about using it as a tool to enhance that learning experience.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What else are they up to?
So they have this other project that might surprise you.
Okay.
It's called churchoai.website.
Church of AI. Okay.
And it delves into this intersection between artificial intelligence and spirituality.
Wow.
And a lot of it is looked at in the context of Bhutan's Buddhist philosophy.
Okay.
They're asking some really big questions about things like the nature of consciousness, the ethics of AI, and also the potential for technology to actually support spiritual growth.
Now that is a deep dive. I am really intrigued by that.
Yeah. It seems like they're not shying away from those philosophical implications.
Not at all. They're diving right in.
Of these advancements. That's cool.
Yeah. And then there's vox.gdn, which is all about fostering global collaboration and dialogue.
Good.
It's this platform for sharing knowledge, connecting with people, and working together to address some of the world's biggest challenges.
It's like they're building a network of change makers around the world.
Yeah.
And they're all united by this shared commitment to well-being, cultural understanding, and using technology for good.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the specifics of this partnership. We've got this article that outlines 20 reasons why this is such a special partnership.
Right.
And one that really jumped out at me was this focus on empowering indigenous women.
That's a huge part of TATANKA's mission.
Yeah.
They know that indigenous women often face really unique challenges.
Yeah.
And their voices are so crucial to creating a more just and equitable world. I can already see how this partnership could provide Bhutanese women with all these opportunities to become leaders in fields like technology, education, cultural preservation, right?
Absolutely. And it's not just about providing the opportunity.
Right.
It's about creating a space where their voices are truly heard and valued.
This all sounds incredibly promising.
It does.
But I'm also wondering about the challenges, because merging traditional cultures with modern technology and these global initiatives, it can't be easy.
It's definitely complex.
So how do they ensure that this cultural exchange is happening respectfully without one culture, dominating or overshadowing another?
That's where TATANKA's emphasis on listening and collaboration comes in.
Okay.
They're not coming in and trying to tell people what to do.
Right.
They work really closely with the indigenous communities. They respect their knowledge, their traditions, their values.
Got it.
It's more about facilitating a dialogue.
So it's a two-way street.
Exactly.
With both sides learning from each other.
Yeah. It's about creating a synergy.
I can see how that approach would be really relevant in the context of cultural preservation.
Absolutely.
It's not about creating a museum of the past. It's about making tradition relevant in the present.
It's like a conversation between generations.
Yeah.
Each one contributing their wisdom.
That's beautiful.
To create something new and meaningful.
I think that's where education plays a huge role, right?
Totally.
Giving younger generations the tools and knowledge to navigate this complex landscape.
Couldn't agree more.
Is essential.
Absolutely.
Speaking of education, let's circle back to the role of AI for a second.
Okay.
I'm curious to hear more about how TATANKA is actually using AI to make education more accessible, more effective, especially in a place like Bhutan.
Yeah.
What are some of the specific challenges and opportunities that they're facing?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is definitely this thing called the digital divide. Bhutan's been doing a great job of expanding internet access.
Yeah.
But there are still some communities, those really remote ones, where it's really limited.
So how do they overcome that?
So they're actually doing a couple things.
Okay.
They're developing these offline learning platforms that can be accessed on tablets or smartphones.
Got it.
And then at the same time, they're working with these local communities to try to build sustainable internet infrastructure.
That's impressive.
It's a huge undertaking.
And what about the content itself?
Yeah.
How are they using AI to personalize that learning experience and make it more engaging?
So they're using these AI algorithms to analyze student data.
Got it.
And really try to figure out those individual learning patterns and needs. And then based on that, they can create customized learning paths that adapt to each student's pace and style.
So it's like having a personal tutor, but powered by AI. That's pretty incredible.
It's amazing what technology can do these days.
I imagine there are also some cultural considerations to take into account, right? How do they make sure that the content is relevant and respectful of those local traditions and values?
That's where that collaboration with the indigenous communities is so important.
Yeah.
They involve the local educators and cultural experts in every step of the process. From, developing the curriculum to creating the content.
So they're not just imposing a one-size-fits-all solution. They're co-creating it with the communities they serve. That's a really important distinction.
It is. It's about empowering those communities to own their education.
Yeah.
And make sure that it reflects what they need and want.
This all feels incredibly hopeful.
It is.
It sounds like they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible with technology and education.
For sure.
And it's not just about the technical stuff.
Right.
It's about the human element.
It is. It's about using technology to make those human connections stronger.
Yeah.
Foster that cultural understanding.
Right.
And really empower those individuals to thrive.
I'm definitely eager to learn more.
Well, good. Because we've only just scratched the surface.
Perfect. We have plenty more to discuss.
Yeah.
But maybe we should take a little pause here so we can absorb all this information.
Sounds good.
And then we'll come back and dive deeper into this amazing partnership.
All right.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
All right. So we've seen that Bhutan and TATANKA are doing some really innovative stuff.
Yeah.
Like at the intersection of culture and technology and well-being.
Right.
But I think before we get too carried away with the feel-good vibes, it's important to acknowledge that there are always challenges when you're dealing with something this complex.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like weaving a tapestry with all these threads from different worlds. You really have to pay attention to those tensions and make sure that in the end, what you create is beautiful but also strong.
That's such a good analogy.
Thanks.
So what are some of the potential, like, pitfalls you need to be aware of?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is just making sure that cultural exchange is happening in a way that's really equitable and respectful.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's so easy for these well-intentioned initiatives to accidentally perpetuate these power imbalances.
Right.
Or even like reinforce stereotypes.
So how do they guard against that?
Right.
It's not enough to just say we're committed to cultural sensitivity.
Exactly.
You actually have to put those principles into practice.
And that's where TATANKA's emphasis on really listening and collaborating comes in. They're not coming in and trying to dictate an agenda or impose their values on anybody. They're like working side by side with those indigenous communities, really trying to learn from their wisdom and making sure that their voices are front and center.
So it's more about facilitating a dialogue and dictating terms.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it takes a lot of humility and this willingness to kind of step back and let those with that lived experience lead the way.
I imagine there might also be some pushback from some people in Bhutan who are a little wary of outside influence or worried that modernization might erode those traditions. So how do they navigate that tension between preserving the past and embracing progress?
It's definitely a balancing act.
Yeah.
It's something that, you know, every culture has to deal with.
Right.
I think the key is to approach change in a way that honors the past, but also creates that space for the future.
Right.
It's not about erasing tradition.
Yeah.
It's about making it relevant.
Right.
And making it come alive in the modern world.
And that brings us back to technology, which can be such a powerful tool for cultural preservation, but also, you know, a potential threat.
Yeah, for sure.
How do we make sure that AI and all these other advancements are being used in a way that strengthens cultural identity rather than diminishing it?
That is a question that a lot of experts around the world are trying to answer.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy one.
No.
But one thing that's clear is that we can't just hand it all over to algorithms.
Right.
We have to have human judgment.
Right.
That cultural sensitivity and those ethical considerations need to be like the priority.
So it's not about replacing human expertise with artificial intelligence. It's about using AI as a tool to enhance and expand our understanding.
It's like a partnership.
Yeah.
Where technology and tradition are working together to create something even better.
I love that. It's like they're creating a new kind of hybrid wisdom.
Yeah.
Drawing on the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
But I am curious, how scalable is this model? Could other countries adopt a similar approach, even if they don't have that same cultural or philosophical foundation as Bhutan?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And one that I think is worth exploring.
Yeah.
Bhutan's definitely unique.
Yeah.
And that context plays a role in their success. But those underlying principles, like prioritizing well-being, respecting cultural diversity, using technology responsibly, those are universal.
So it's about adapting those principles to different contexts and figuring out how to integrate them into existing systems.
Right.
It's not about copying Bhutan's model word for word.
It's about taking inspiration from their approach and figuring out how those lessons can be applied to different cultures and communities.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. There are going to be obstacles. Not every country is as committed to happiness as Bhutan.
Right.
And not every culture is as open to embracing technology as maybe we see in Bhutan.
Change is hard.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be resistance. But that doesn't mean that we should just give up on the idea.
Right.
I think even small steps in the right direction can have this ripple effect.
So it's about planting seeds, nurturing those seeds until they grow into something really strong. And that's where the power of collaboration comes in.
For sure.
Because no one person or organization can do this alone.
It takes all of us.
Right. It requires that collective effort, that willingness to share knowledge, resources, expertise across borders.
It's like they're building a global network of change makers who all have this vision of a world that's more just equitable and sustainable.
But how do they measure success?
How do you quantify something as intangible as happiness or cultural vibrancy.
Right. And that's where things get interesting.
Oh.
We're so used to measuring progress in terms of money.
Right, like GDP.
Exactly. But Bhutan's challenging us to think beyond that and consider the well-being of the planet and its people as metrics that are just as important.
So they're tracking things like life expectancy.
Yes.
Levels of education, access to healthcare, environmental quality, even like subjective measures of happiness and life satisfaction.
They're getting data from all these different sources, like quantitative and qualitative, to try and get a holistic picture of how their policies are really impacting people's lives.
And what are they finding?
What they're finding is that when you focus on well-being, it actually leads to positive outcomes across the board.
So it's not just about feeling good.
Exactly. It's about creating a society where people have the opportunity to thrive in all aspects of their lives.
In every single aspect.
That's powerful.
It is.
And it's a message that I think resonates far beyond the borders of Bhutan.
It's a message for all of us.
It's a reminder that we actually have the power to create the kind of world we want to live in.
Right.
And it all starts with asking ourselves what really matters.
Absolutely.
What kind of legacy do we want to leave behind?
And those are the questions that I really hope our listeners will think about as we go into the last part of our conversation.
I'm ready. All right, so we've talked about a lot in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
You know, everything from gross national happiness to like using AI for cultural preservation.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. It's been really fascinating. Yeah. But I think it's time to maybe bring things down to earth a little bit and talk about what this all means for like our listeners.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's easy to get kind of swept up in the big ideas.
Right.
But ultimately change happens like at the individual level.
It does, yeah.
So what are some practical steps that people can take to embody these values that we've been talking about?
I think a great place to start is just by being curious and open to other cultures.
Yeah.
You know, we live in a world that's so interconnected.
Right.
And yet it's so easy to stay in our own little bubbles.
Totally.
So making an effort to step outside of your comfort zone and learn about different traditions and beliefs and perspectives.
That makes sense, but how do you do that in a way that's respectful and genuine? I don't want to just be like a tourist.
Yeah, I get it.
Gawking at another culture. Yeah. I want to actually engage in a meaningful way.
I think that's where humility comes in.
Okay.
You know, approach other cultures with a willingness to listen and to learn and also to unlearn.
Right.
Don't assume you have all the answers and be open to having your own assumptions challenged.
So it's about being a student.
Exactly.
Not an expert.
Yeah, and remember, you don't have to travel to some far-off land to engage with other cultures.
Right.
There are so many opportunities right in your own community.
Okay.
Like check out local festivals, museums, art galleries, community centers. You might be surprised by the diversity.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
And what about technology?
Okay.
We've talked a lot about its potential for good and bad.
Right.
How can we as individuals make sure that we're using technology in a way that aligns with well-being, with cultural understanding, with sustainability?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with just being more aware of how we're using it.
Yeah.
What kind of content are we consuming? What are we supporting with our purchases?
Yeah.
Are we using it to connect with others?
Right.
Or are we just scrolling mindlessly on social media?
So it's about being more intentional. Exactly.
With our technology use.
Yeah, and making choices that really reflect what we believe in. It's also about using your voice to advocate for responsible technology development.
Okay, how do we do that?
You know, support companies that are prioritizing ethical AI, data privacy, sustainability. Speak out against hate speech and misinformation.
Yeah.
Encourage tech companies to create things that help us instead of making us addicted.
Those are good suggestions.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to forget that we actually have more power than we realize.
We really do.
You know, we vote with our wallets.
Yeah.
Our clicks, our voices.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every single day.
So what's one like concrete action that our listeners can take today, right now, to make a difference?
Okay, so I want everyone listening to think about one small act of kindness or compassion, or maybe something that shows cultural understanding.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as talking to someone from a different background.
Donating to a cause that you care about.
Yeah.
Or even learning a few phrases in another language.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we don't have to wait for someone else to create change.
Yeah.
We can start right now.
You have the power.
With what we have.
Exactly. And even those small actions can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Never underestimate the power of your voice, your creativity, your commitment to making the world a better place.
This deep dive has been such an inspiring journey.
It really has.
We've learned so much about Bhutan, TATANKA, and how powerful it can be to blend that ancient wisdom with modern innovation.
Right. To create a world that's more just and equitable and joyful.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
And I hope our listeners will join us in carrying these insights forward into their own lives and communities.
I hope so too.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure being here.
We hope you'll tune in next time for another fascinating exploration of ideas that matter.